Hi, this is Dr. P to talk about something that's primarily of interest for tabletop games because in computer games you can have the computer track the scores. But in tabletop games we've got to do it some other way. And this arises from various means of scoring used for my game Britannia over the years. Now most games use scoring tracks, some use score sheets, a few use scoring chits, and even fewer may provide no method and people use their smartphones or something else. The scoring track is quite common, and when you run the track around the edge of the board, it doesn't take up a lot of space. There are two big problems. The scoring markers can get knocked off the track, and you can have math or, if you prefer, arithmetic errors. You know, somebody scored 17 points and they added to what they've got and they do the math wrong. And if nobody catches that, then that's something that can't be drawn back. You can't find the error later. Now, the smaller the scores, the less you have of the arithmetic errors, of course. If people are scoring 4 or 5 a turn, then they usually just count the 4 or the 5 on the track. In a long competitive game, such as Britannia, which is 45 hours, and where in 7 hours for inexperienced players, and where there are 200 plus points scored per player, then errors, both accidental and deliberate, are likely. Score sheets, you can go from a simple game like Yahtzee to something more complex like Britannia. Some score sheets are very detailed, some are very simple, like the score sheet in Bridge is very simple. Many players don't like to have to write anything down during a game. This was Fantasy Flight Games' reason not to use score sheets in Britannia 2nd edition. Math errors do occur. At the WBC Britannia tournament, I now check the arithmetic on all the score sheets as the games end, and I find errors which sometimes can make a difference between who won the game and who did not. The score sheet gives players a better view of the game than a track or chits do. In the case of Britannia, you can see which nation scored what points when, and that's important in Britannia. Scoring chits are quite rare. In the Fantasy Flight Games edition, I convinced Fantasy Flight that a scoring track was a bad idea for the game, so they chose to include scoring circular markers in 1, 5, and 25 denominations. Now, I've only seen these actually used once, but most of the time I'm watching people play at conventions where the players are more experienced, and I think as players become more experienced, they're more likely to use a score sheet. Scoring chits may help you keep scores secret, but if the score is trackable, that is, if everyone knows how much their opponent scored each turn, then someone is likely to keep the score on paper even when the chits are used so that they know what the actual score is. My general opinion is if a score is trackable, then trying to hide it is ridiculous. And what about smartphones and other things? I think particularly of Magic the Gathering. I've seen people use cubes to track hit points. I've seen them use a 20-sided die. You turn the side with the current hit points face up. I've seen them use smartphones, no app needed really, or just scratch paper because you're tracking only one thing. Here's a particular occasion from my experience. My game Sea Kings is a victory point game, and each player tracks separately 3 different scores: land, wealth, and fame. During development, I used a separate sheet scoring track. In other words, it was 8.5 by 11 and had the boxes of the scoring track on it. I found I needed to make the early number boxes much larger than later because there might be a large number of markers in the low numbers, for example, the 2 box. But when the publisher had the art done with a track around the board, the artist made all the boxes the same small size. When I pointed out the error during pre-production, before it was published, the publisher didn't do anything about it. And it's a pain in the ass. Don't just assume scoring a track around the board is the best way to keep score, and don't assume that the scoring track should have boxes that are all the same size. Thanks for listening.